Hi, everyone. My name is Chantal Roy, Director of Membership Services at St. Joseph Media. Thank you all for joining us today for a virtual TL Insider Fireside Chat on the future of money with Rajan Bansi, Head of RBC InvestEase, and Debbie Gamble, Chief Officer of Innovation Labs and New Ventures at Interac. Some quick housekeeping notes. Please make sure to ask any questions or leave any comments you may have in the chat box at the bottom of your screen. And we'll open up an audience Q&A at the very end of today's discussion. Thank you kindly to our guest hosts, Debbie and Rajan, for being here today. Now I'd like to introduce our host, Jason Maganoy, Head of Business Development at St. Joseph Media. Take it away, Jason.
Thank you so much, Chantal, and welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. So today, we are going to be talking about the future of money. So everything from digital privacy to artificial intelligence, cryptocurrency, and transformation of payment technology. I'm actually broadcasting live from a secret location. It's my cold storage for my Bitcoin. No one should know where I am, and hopefully you won't find me. But this is that's sort of the direction we're going to be going in our conversation. And to start off, I would love for the both of you to introduce yourself to our audience. And let's start with Debbie.
Thanks, Jason. And hi, everybody. My name's Debbie Gamble. I look after innovation at Interac. So many of you tuning in today will know Interac. Hopefully you use us every day as you go about your business. And my team's goal is to think about how we can continue to service Canadians as they go about their payment business and their digital business moving into the future.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rajan Bansi. I'm the head of RBC InvestEase. We are an online investment management company. So what does that mean? From the comforts of your home or wherever you are, we run a business where you can sign up with no minimum to have your money invested, no forms to sign, no people to meet with. But if you need human support, you can always reach us digitally. And as I'm sure most of you can appreciate, it's a business whose time has certainly come and is growing leaps and bounds these days, given the amount of time we're all spending A, at home, and B, on our devices.
Thank you so much. And thank you again for joining us. And that's actually a perfect, Rajan, your introduction is actually a perfect segue into my first question for the both of you, which is about GameStop. So what is that about? So who'd like to start off with that one?
Go ahead, Rajan.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. What is that about? I think it's something old and it's something new. And what do I mean by that? I think when it comes to financial markets, especially when it comes to the stock market, markets have always been driven by greed and fear, right? And I say to my colleagues and anyone who will ask, which is usually only Jason, for all the focus on Reddit, and I understand, trust me, the focus on Reddit existed a year ago, and nevertheless, markets were collapsing a year ago because there was an enormous amount of fear. At the current time, we're in a market that's come well off of its lows. You have a significant amount of liquidity in the financial markets from monetary support, from fiscal support, but also just practically. If you think about it in Canada, our colleagues at RBC Economics have done some work, and 99% of COVID deaths in Canada have unfortunately been experienced by those who are over the age of 50. Yet by the end of June, the vast majority of that segment of the population in this country will be vaccinated. And as a result, if you look at financial market activity now over the last 4 weeks, financial market activity is looking towards a recovery and a return to normal. Now, maybe not normal in our everyday lives, but normal from an economic perspective. And as a result, I think there's just a little bit more greed sentiment within the market that existed before Reddit, it existed before the internet. And I think we're just seeing more of those interactions in a digital sphere. Certainly something to think about and to watch out for, both from an investment perspective and a regulatory perspective. But that's how I would look at it. Something that's old, that's just a newer twist on something that's been around for a long time.
What are your thoughts, Debbie?
Well, I like the idea of the newer twist. I think, it's certainly some interesting newsworthy commentary on what's been happening over the last little while with GameStop and some others, but predominantly GameStop. And I think, it's probably about a few things. I think it's, partly around that kind of, certainly the kind of greed. And I think it's also perhaps could be viewed through the kind of David and Goliath story, and the kind of everyday investor versus the institutional investor. That's an interesting angle that the media has used. And I think a lot of it is actually about how technology has allowed any of us to participate in things that perhaps we would have more, in the past, we'd have looked at more traditional players to do for us. So some of the work that Rajan and his team have done, for example, puts some of the control in the hands of the user, right? So with solutions like RBC solutions and certainly some of the stuff in the news, you've seen lots of people gather together. So you could actually think about this notion of, whether it's the democratization of something, but I think there's certainly a lot about that. And I think we've also got to think about, why are consumers, why are people, why are investors using different channels, and why are they going to places like Reddit to banter and gather together? And I think a lot of this technology has given us platforms like Reddit, like Wall Street Bets, that was one of the key groups that started some of the GameStop activity, a forum to kind of discuss some of these things and think about alternate ways of how they might invest, who they might prefer to trust. And I think GameStop and then others, you saw it move from GameStop to AMC to BlackBerry, at one point to silver, and then to one of the cryptocurrencies. So, and then you saw the market reality happen, and now you've seen it kind of go up again. So I think it's a really interesting story for us to watch, because I think there's going to be a whole bunch of insights for us here, and none the least of which is how we use some of the technology to go about, our day-to-day lives.
That's actually, so my follow-up question to that, and it's for the both of you, is, a huge part of the financial system and the huge part of how it can continue to function is trust. And, one of the things that I'm seeing is when I see a stock for a business that's actually not that great a business shooting up the way that it is, and with all the information out there and not really fully comprehending what's going on, I trust the system a bit less. Do you feel that that's the case, or is there a way to sort of help sort of reinforce trust or build trust back despite what's happening with GameStop right now?
Well, it's not going to be a great analogy because I thought of it on the spot, and those types of analogies usually fall flat. But I would say, let's say you're driving a vehicle or a bicycle, whatever. And if you're driving that vehicle and the vehicle breaks, you can fault the vehicle, right? But if something else happens and there's something that goes wrong from your perspective, it may or may not be the vehicle. So I'd say if we're talking about the issue of trust, it kind of depends. If the issue was that one was trying to trade this security and they couldn't, and in the US, I know that was in a situation that arose, less so in Canada to my awareness at least. I can see how that would erode trust, but I would say if somebody was, this is money, and if somebody was trading this security and they lost money, but their trades were executed as they went to execute their trades, I'm not sure if it's the financial system that necessarily went wrong. What went wrong, and look, I always say this, this, Jason, it's a no judgment zone. Trust me, not now, but when I was younger, I made a lot of mistakes trying to trade individual stocks, and it was a period of self-reflection, and then just to figure out if this is speculating. I guess I should just buy a 649 ticket. But if I'm looking to build wealth, this is not the way that I'm going to build wealth. I need to do that through some other means. Luckily, for me, I learned that lesson at the .com bubble, very similar to the GameStop activity, to be honest with you, and that's 25 years ago. So I'm not sure if this is so much of a financial system trust issue in Canada as much as it is a time for reflection. Am I gambling? And if I'm gambling, should I really be doing that in the financial markets? Do I know what I'm doing and I'm speculating? At which case I have to be able to be comfortable with this risk of loss. And if not, and if I do want to grow my money, but I don't know how to do it, or I don't have the time, or this is a lot of expertise, and maybe I need to go look at another avenue, that might be to some degree some sort of an expensive lesson, but it would be a good lifelong lesson. And in Canada, if you're an investor, it's the greatest time to be alive. And I mean that sincerely. There are so many options at your fingertips. And you just have to select on the menu what's the right fit for you.
Wow. Well, that actually takes me to my next question, which is for Debbie. And one of the things that's happened like during the pandemic is there's been this giant move to e-commerce. And with that, more of our personal information is finding its way on to the internet. I can't even count the number of times I've filled out forms on Facebook hoping to get a t-shirt. So, but at the same, but at the same time, our privacy is under assault. Cybersecurity and the safety of everything seems tenuous at best. Like the United States just had the biggest hack in history at the Pentagon. So how has Interac played a role in protecting our digital selves?
Before I kind of jump to the question about Interac, and thank you for that, I think this is actually we're back to the question of trust. Actually, it's still part of that kind of previous question. Not so much trust in the kind of investment institutions, but I think as our lives become more and more digital and we grapple with the realities of that, and COVID has accelerated that, right? So the last almost a year now for us in Canada, we have, as individuals and as businesses, we are adjusting our daily lives to a digital reality. And so you have to do that, users of that, of whatever it is, whether it's social, whether it's business, whether it's just kind of filling out forms, as you said, we have to have a flavor of trust in that engagement. And the trust factor it's an essential element to society. It unifies, our communities, and it's a key element to the success of any business. And so that kind of movement to our digital selves means that there has to be a trust factor in there. That trust factor has to enable people to feel confident, and it has to be authentic. So saying that, how do we do that? And from an Interac perspective, we build that into every stage of the offerings that we bring to market. So I could bore everybody to tears up from a technical side of, well, what does that mean around privacy and security? And of course, we use industry grade technology and capabilities to ensure that those engagements are using capabilities that are a step ahead of the fraudsters or some of the bad actors in the ecosystem. But I would say that because we are in this digital reality, we have to be vigilant. All of us have to be vigilant. When I'm not sure you'd be filling out forms on Facebook these days for a t-shirt, so we have to kind of balance that. What are you going to do for convenience versus being vigilant around protecting your identity? At Interac, we're doing a huge amount of work on that because we see this is inextricably linked to probably a bunch of topics we'll get into when we're talking about the future of money. And they're topics around privacy, they're topics around digital identity, security, and ultimately Canadians feeling safe that they can engage with their institutions, whether that be through their banks, through their retailers, through government itself, and ensure that engagement is actually authentic and that you can trust that when you are conducting a transaction, that you feel confident that you're safe.
This actually takes me to my next question for Rajan, which is, like you said, Debbie, financial services, everything seems to be moving online, but then online is a space of partial attention. It's full of misinformation. My mom recently just got online. She paid her first bill. She paid her hydro bill for the first time ever through her computer. She was freaking out. It's like, how do I know that was hydro? So how has RBC InvestEase been working to make it easier for consumers to navigate this really noisy digital landscape? And how do you help people move from the analog to the digital?
Sure, I'll give you a couple stories. I guess I like stories apparently, and to make that practical from with regards to your question. And although I'm sure I'm probably the only person on this call who listened to it, RBC reported its earnings yesterday, and as our CEO talked about some of the digital trends, I'm a Gen Xer, which means I'm old. And one of the insights that he shared is something like north of 70% of all deposit accounts, so bank accounts that were opened online. And I think if you're under 40, I'm not, by the way, but if you're under 40, you're like, what are the other 30% of people doing? But if you're me, and you worked as a bank teller in your teens, 100% of people open their bank account in person. And it was 20 years ago, and I guess 20 years is a long time, but that's like a huge shift, right? So, and I use that example to say, I think what's a nifty digital tool, like you use the example of your mom, Jason, I think it kind of depends upon your perspective. And again, we do similar type events with MBA, law school students, undergraduate students across the country. And many of them are just shocked. Debbie won't be, but some of them are just shocked at how fragmented the US banking system is. So we take paying a bill online for granted. We've been able to send email e-transfers for I don't know how long, and we just kind of take that for granted. And
Since
for years,
2003.
Yeah, Americans are like, you can do what? So it kind of depends. I would say in Canada, what we take for granted is we've got a pretty great system, and we've got actually pretty phenomenal plumbing. Now I'm going to answer your questions directly. So what are some of the things that we do on the investments front? If you're an RBC, if you bank with RBC, you have your bank account with RBC, you probably have the mobile app. And within the mobile app, there's this functionality called Know Me Insights. And it just provides you some AI-driven insights on your spending patterns to help you with your budgeting. If you got some extra money in your bank account, it tells you that you can move that money in the bank account into a high interest savings account, no forms to sign, no people to talk to, no fees, no strings attached. You get the money back at any time. In the summer, we'll be launching a similar functionality that out of that mobile banking app, you'll get an AI generated insight. Say, Jason, notice you've had an extra $100 in your bank account for the last 24 months. In these 6 to 8 steps, you can open an investment account with InvestEase, no forms to sign, no people to talk to, and you'll be done. And I think for a lot of people who are digitally savvy, primarily younger people, again, their approach is like, finally, like, what took you so long? Whereas people who are a little bit older are like, wow, that's incredible. Like, how do you do that? And that extends to, I think, all products and services within financial services. So, I've given you some of the Know Me stuff, the email transfer, what a lot of people find kind of fascinating. But again, if you're more digitally savvy, your approach as well, like, of course that should exist, is if you're in the RBC mobile banking app and you're a client, you can actually go in within the app and put in, if you own a home or a condo anywhere in Canada, you can put in when you bought your home, what you bought it for, where you live, and on the spot, you get an instant home evaluation. And it's an estimate within a range, and it's based on sales data by postal code over a period of time. So what we always say to clients, and when I do these events, whether it's here or in any other forum, is we try not to make it about the technology. And I mean that sincerely. Like, we try to make it about the client. We put that client in the center and try to figure out what's the problem that we can solve for you, or what are you coming to us and what do you need, and what are all the tools in our toolkit that we can use in this situation. And sometimes it's a new and upcoming technology, and other times it's a technology that's been around for decades. But I think Debbie's also got some good stuff she's going to share.
Well, I think I love your point that Canadians are, we're actually from the payments and banking perspective, we are really well serviced. But there's a lot of stuff that the new technology allows us to do and allows us to kind of enhance that experience that Rajan was just talking about. And in the kind of Canadian payment space, we have been spending a lot of time on what does that mean? How do we help digitize Canadian small businesses, which, as you know, is the backbone of our economy, right? And as we're hopefully moving to the other side of the COVID pandemic, there'll be a significant amount of focus, both on the public and private sector, around how do we enable that. And that kind of consumer journey that Rajan was just talking about is a key component to how we do that. Some of the things that I mentioned as we were just talking about, the security and trust factors, at Interac, we're working with in full transparency here. RBC are one of our key shareholders, as are the other financial institutions across the country. And we work collaboratively together to figure out how do we bring some of those new capabilities, the promise of the new technology, enhanced security, but ultimately solving, as Rajan said, some of the challenges that the market is faced with. And the Canadian financial ecosystem, and that includes many of the startups, and we have a very vibrant startup community in Canada, are working together to figure out how do we enable some of that economic recovery. What will that mean to not just the young consumers, but some of the older folk around what can we do to make their lives better, and what kind of technology can we bring to the forefront that can bring that enhanced sense of convenience while also solving some of their challenges and delivering on some amazing opportunities.
I mean, I love hearing about all of this amazing innovation happening in the financial sector. That, like, those two features at RBC are pretty incredible. I'm probably going to want to take advantage of those. But one of the things that we've learned over the pandemic is, like, and this is for both of you, but like from GameStop to COVID to the insurrection, it snowed in Texas and it's in utter disarray. It's like Mad Max down there. So it seems like we're always one thing away from complete instability. So how has the financial sector been building resilience in the face of that sense of uncertainty?
Well, I'm not sure about instability. I'd question that, certainly, and that's not the case from a financial sector. But I completely acknowledge that, we are, as a global population, we are faced with some huge challenges, right? Whether that be climate, whether it be social unrest, whether it just be the advancement of technology and what it means to our day-to-day reality and how we grapple with all of those things. So, that kind of movement from our analog reality into a more digital space is creating all kinds of opportunities, but it's changing the way that we look at things, both from a how can we collaborate to solve some of these challenges, but also how do we address a whole slew of the security issues that you mentioned a while back. But I think there's huge opportunities in front of us, and I think the last year has actually spurred on perhaps some of the things that we're certainly we were looking at as a community, but they've certainly, like, think about the notion of digital ID and the idea of having that safe, trusted capability so that you don't have to, walk to a Services Ontario booth to renew your driver's license, those kinds of things. So I think the Canadian technology innovation and certainly the financial services ecosystem are rallying around some of the things that we can bring to bear together to help address some of those challenges.
I would echo Debbie's comments. I would say in Canada, and credit to the players, credit honestly to the regulators over time, to the governments over time. We have a very strong financial system, and that extends beyond the large banks that we often talk about. That goes to within the insurance space, within the fintech space. We just have a very strong system, and obviously we can't take that for granted. So I'm less concerned about instability there. I would say that, and we say about this about even our team, when people say RBC has a responsibility, it does as a company, but at the end of the day, that company is made up of people. It's people that make the magic happen, right? So, and those people have a responsibility. So, and I mean this sincerely, as a business and having worked here for 15 years, people stick around because they buy into it. And part of what you buy into is that this company, and as a person who works there, you have a responsibility. You have a responsibility to your community. And Jason, full disclosure, you and I sit on a not-for-profit board together, and I sit on another not-for-profit board, and I'm involved with various others. The company itself, I think, has taken a position on very important issues, whether it's racial inequality, gender inequality, to say progress has been made, but no one is satisfied with where we are, and there's significant work to do. And today there was a press release on, again, with respect to climate change. This is what we've achieved to date. We have a Herculean task ahead of us, and here's what we're going to accomplish and how over the next 20 years. I think some of these really big problems in our society, again, gender inequality, racial inequality, income inequality, climate change, these are all accepted part and parcel of, if you're going to be a part of this RBC team, you kind of buy in that in addition to running our business, ahead of that is you have to have really strong, vibrant communities, because without that, you don't have a business. So they're one and the same, and that's where we kind of focus all of our leadership efforts, I would say.
I love this idea of progress. And speaking of progress, this actually takes me to my next series of questions, which is about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So it went from GameStop and now it's crypto. And we're going to be doing a lot more about cryptocurrency because there's a lot of interest, especially in that space. People want to learn more. A lot of great finance minds are saying that it's a new way to store value separate from the financial markets. My questions to the both of you are, is it real? Is it the future? And will it be the way we pay for things in our dystopian future? So let's start with Rajan.
I was going to say it's my turn to say Debbie, you first, but I guess to answer your question, yeah, it's real. It completely looks like it's real. Number one. Number two, really do wish I kind of bought some at $500. But, the third thing that I would say is when it comes to investing, I have most of my personal investments in what someone who trades crypto would find very boring. I'm married. I have a mortgage. I have a 5-year-old child. I have like objectives that I want to financially reach for that and many other personal things in my life that are important. And as a result, I think about my risk tolerance and my ability to lose a lot. I think I know more than the average person about crypto, but I don't know enough to invest in it. So I personally don't own any crypto. That's not to take anything away from crypto, but I just know what I don't know. And what I often say is, for the people that I follow in the crypto space who are very thoughtful, and I've taken classes and gone to various seminars on crypto and listened to crypto experts, fintech experts, and they generally say, even if you're in the crypto space, you shouldn't have more than 5 or 10% of the money that you invest within crypto. To which I say, great, I focus on the other 90%. And our business is about the other 95% of how you manage your wealth. So we don't offer crypto, just like we don't offer single line stocks. And we really do put that client at the center and think about risk. So if we get an application from a client who wants to invest for 12 months, we actually call them and we say, this is not the right solution for you, right? And people are always really impressed. They're like, you could take my money and make money off me. And I'm like, yeah, that's not what it's about. What it's about is to show you that we have your back. And there are other solutions, and we can tell you what those other solutions are. Yeah, there's other solutions at RBC, but this is just what you need to think about. And quite often, those people will come back at a later point in time and interact with us in another manner with a longer time horizon. And that's how we approach it.
What are your thoughts, Debbie?
Oh, I could spend probably the next half an hour. I've spent a good chunk of my career in the kind of crypto digital currency space. So I've usually got too much to say about it, but so I'll try to keep it brief. Is it real? Absolutely. But I think crypto is real. Bitcoin is real. Blockchain is real. How we should look at it and use it, that's kind of all still evolving. And I have to say, I actually sold my first Bitcoin at $100. And I thought, you know, a team and I were working on some crypto stuff, and we mined some and thought we bought dinner with the $100 and thought we did really well. So, you know, that's just a good illustration of how much I know about investing. So don't take any investing advice from me at all. I also want to react to your kind of notion of a dystopian future. I don't think it's dystopian at all. However, it does feel like sometimes, given all of the, you know, the changes and the challenges that we're faced with, it might feel like we're in an Orwellian, you know, kind of scenery, right? So I think that there are a bunch of things that are at play that are almost, you know, kind of legitimizing crypto. And those things at play are, you know, there's COVID happening, there's kind of an over exuberance of the market, which Rajan would know way better than I would. There's low interest rates. And so we're starting to see some things kind of shift, and we're starting to see, you know, more institutional investors, the more corporations using crypto, whether it be Bitcoin or others, as a mechanism to store value. And you're seeing that a fair amount. We're also seeing a change in where people can actually transact in cryptocurrencies. I think, you know, there is this notion of value store, safe haven. I mean, some other stuff that's been in the news over the last few months are, you know, big companies using some of their cash on hand in their treasury to invest in things like Bitcoin. So you saw, you know, players in the US like MicroStrategy announced they put in, I think it was around 500 million of US from their treasury in. You saw companies like Square announced this, I think probably late last year. And then more recently, of course, the kind of crazy stories around Elon Musk and Tesla. And how much did he put in? Like a 1.5 billion into of the treasury into Bitcoin. And then, of course, you saw, you know, over the last week or so, their stock price drop as Bitcoin. So it's still quite volatile, but, you know, if I'd have kept hold of that $100, which wasn't that long ago, right? Like that was 2010, probably we mined. So 10 years ago, what is it worth today? What's it worth today?
I don't think you should look.
Yeah, right. So again, don't take any advice from me on investing. As far as crypto in the future, I think what you're actually going to see a lot more of are traditional institutions looking at how to use the technology in a way to go about their business. So you're seeing central banks around the world, including our own, look at crypto as a potential way of thinking about, is there an opportunity to provide even more digital capability here? So, you know, even the kind of fiat-based currencies, you know, players are looking at that. You've got certainly the People's Bank of China actively involved in their Belt and Road Initiative, Bank of England, the European Central Bank, and Bank of Canada, all actively looking at crypto as a little different from Bitcoin, as, you know, that would be called a stable coin where it's backed, but using the core technology and to be able to really think about, is there a better way for us to move value around? And then, of course, you've got the world's largest social platform in Facebook announcing a number of years ago that they were going to participate. So they call that Libra initially, and more recently it's been renamed to Diem. And they've come out with a wallet, which is back to this idea of, well, how do you make it usable? What problems are you trying to solve for your customers? And the wallet that they kind of have brought out is actually linking crypto with digital ID. So we're going back to that kind of, how do you, it's not just about moving money in a digital form, how do you enable people to transact and be fully immersed and feel that they, that they're safe and they can trust the system. So, that I don't think the future is dystopian at all, but and I think there's going to be some very interesting things happening in that space over the next few years.
I love that you mentioned Facebook, because when I was first initially reading about Libra and it being this stable coin that allowed unbanked individuals to access financial services, it was just so incredibly aspirational. Yeah. And then at the same time, I was at a Hasty Mart buying Bitcoin on an ATM machine. So,
yes, exactly.
So the disconnect between that incredible technology, which was going to basically completely revolutionize financial services because of its access to the unbanked, and then I'm in Hasty Mart, it showed how little I knew about anything. So that was phenomenal. And this actually is a next question for Rajan, which is, consumers have endless choice. So, what are some things that you look for when selecting a financial product or institution to work with? Because one of the main questions I have is there actually a big difference between the big four banks?
You know what? I don't deal with the other three, so you'd have to ask them. I'm being completely honest with you. What was the first part of your question? Because that was a little bit better, Jason.
Yeah. So, what do you look for when you're looking to partner with a product or a financial institution?
I think it depends. Great answer, right? But I think it depends on two things. I think it depends. I think the first higher order is for anything else. Who do you trust? And that doesn't matter if it's financial services or, quite frankly, like takeout, a major appliance purchase, like whatever. Who do you trust just to deal with them? Very quick story. My daughter's 5, and for anyone that's been around a child of any age, you're always shocked at how quickly they outgrow their stuff. So, I'm regularly putting stuff up on Facebook Marketplace for like $3. No, like for free. And there'll be like an avalanche of people that contact me, and some of them scare me and some of them don't. And the people who don't scare me are the people that I say, yeah, come by, come by Crawford Street and you can pick the stuff up. But it's kind of the same. So whoever you're transacting with, who do you trust? I think that's the first higher order determination. And I think for all financial services companies, I think I'm there. I can't speak for everyone, let alone speak for all the big four or anyone else. I think the big difference is customer at the center. Nobody wants to be pitched another product or service, not even me. I get, I don't mind the TL Insider emails, Jason, but the level of emails that I get from businesses, I actually on the surface don't mind. What I do mind is when there's just no source of value. So I'm just the lead and you're just coming at me with offer after offer after offer. What I don't really like that interruption. What I much prefer is an interruption where there's a source of value. So I think, who do you trust and what's the source of value? And that's a really complicated way of saying, what do you need solved, right? So for example, if you're looking for a mortgage or a personal loan and you let me know and I follow up with an email offer about an investment business, your first conclusion is this guy doesn't get it. I might trust him, but he clearly doesn't get it and I'm not at the center. But if you can go through, whether it's in person or through a technology tool where you give 2 or 3 pieces of information, because it's really not that complicated. So for us, the 2 or 3 questions that we ask people are, do you want to do this all by yourself? And if somebody answers yes, we actually tell them straight away, we're not the right solution for you. If you want to deal with RBC, you should go to RBC Direct Investing. And there you can do it all by yourself. Number 2, do you have a comfort with technology? And if the answer is no, we're not the right answer for you. And I think you would know where to go, a traditional bricks and mortar solution of some kind. But if you don't do it, you don't want to do it by yourself and you are comfortable with technology, then it really comes down to what do you want to do? Are you just looking to invest? And if the answer is I just want to save and invest, then we'll just say we have a solution that solves those problems for you, and it's incredibly cheap. It's maybe 25% of what people would have paid 10 years ago, and it's completely digital. There are certain things you need to take into consideration. Unless referred by Jason, I'm kidding. I'm not going to meet a client in person in this business. We just don't do that, right? But we interact with them digitally. But we don't meet in person, and we just focus on investments. And there's not a personal relationship where someone's going to be contacting you about your situation at tax time or retirement income planning. That's just a whole other different relationship. And because we stick to what's simple and straightforward, that's how we keep our fees down.
Mm. Wow, I love that idea of keeping the customer at the center, and it's so true. It's just making sure that every interaction you have with a potential customer is just super valuable, and that's a ton of value to their life. That's a really important philosophy. My next question is for Debbie, and it always goes back to trust. It's like everything that we're talking about is really tied to that concept of trust. And one of the things is the world is changing so fast and everything is evolving so quickly. It's hard for trust to keep up in a way because of the fact that there was a thing where it's like iPhones didn't exist like just a short time ago, and now it's like the only thing. So my question to you is, what's the next big wave? Like, you're working on the innovation side at Interac. So what is the next big wave? What's the next thing we have to trust? Is it AI? Is it, will we be incorporating drones into financial services? We'll be able to pay with our eyes, like in Minority Report. What trends are you seeing, and how will it affect the future of finance and money?
I love that a lot of today's conversation has been about trust. That's a huge theme for us at Interac. And we actually kind of look at our world of financial services through the lens of a trust framework. And back to what Rajan was saying, the customer in the center. What problems can we solve for them? But our framework from a trust engagement perspective, and we embed this within the solutions we put out in the market, means that that engagement has to be built on something authentic. And we've got amazing technology that allows us to kind of digitize some elements to help us prove we are who we say we are. So it has to be authentic. It has to be inclusive, right? So it has to be available to everybody. And that's a big component of the DNA, if you like, of Interac is, we help our shareholders, the financial institutions across Canada, service Canadians. And that's from big cities to remote rural areas right across the country. So our role is about scale and inclusivity. And even through the lens of innovation, right? Thinking about inclusivity is so important to building new solutions. And then the third piece of our kind of trust framework is this notion of relevance, going back to, am I solving your problem? How relevant is this to your needs as an end user, whether you're a consumer or a business? And so we use that trust framework as we're looking at innovation. And to your point of what can we expect in the future in Canada. From a finance and a financial services landscape, there are actually, I have been in the payment space my entire career, and it is very nice that all of a sudden the kind of financial services space is hot, right? It's almost like payments are sexy because we're looking at all these amazing technologies. So in Canada, you can expect over the next little while some really big initiatives happening. So, already the Canadian ecosystem has been working on what we call payments modernization. To your readers and your listeners and your viewers, that basically means, a faster, more relevant way to go about your business. But to Rajan and his team at RBC and my team and the rest of the financial services space, there's a whole infrastructure at play there to allow us to bring best-in-class capabilities for the small businesses, the new entrepreneur, the new startup, the big companies to go about their business efficiently and effectively, and for our economic recovery to happen. So that includes things like infrastructure. It includes big initiatives like open banking that allows for new ideas, new players to hook into our very sophisticated financial services ecosystem in Canada. As Rajan said, we've had things like e-transfer since 2003. So, in many cases, we're further ahead of lots of other countries around the world. And our payments modernization initiatives are bringing us even further into the 21st century. So you can expect things like that. You can expect things like huge plays around data and privacy, is how we started the conversation earlier today. You've already seen the Canadian government announce things like updates to the privacy mandates for organizations and consumers across the country. Lots of focus, certainly, with the recovery from COVID, on digital ID solutions that make those digital interactions easy for everybody. And then I think we're going to be really faced with, grappling with that data from an AI perspective over the next 10, 15 years. And there are some amazing institutions in Canada focused on that. In Toronto, we have one incredible institution, like the Vector Institute at the Mars building at college and university, that are focused with some incredible world experts on AI. But we've got a lot of work to do because, there are other countries leading the way in that space, and we don't want to be left behind. And as historian Niall Ferguson said, those who lead in financial services, the history tells us that those who lead in financial services really lead power around the world. So the future's bright for Canadians as far as some of the technology coming down the pipe. It will be more relevant. It will be, putting you more in the center as a user and help you do what you need to do.
Amazing. So we're approaching the end of our fireside chat, but just a reminder, if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A chat box, and then we can ask our panelists. But my final question for the both of you is, what are your top 3 money trends? So what should we keep an eye on this year? And let's start with Debbie.
I think, just that our realities are moving to digital, everything. So we are paying more with digital. That's going to continue. That's not the future. That's just the way it is today. I think digital ID will play, I've said this, a lot, but that will play a significant role in those trends. And keep an eye on central bank digital currencies, because that is most definitely on the horizon.
What are your thoughts, Rajan?
I would say the number one trend this year for all the folks that are here and everyone is when the summer comes, you're going to be spending your money. And when the fall comes, you're going to be spending your money. It's coming. It's going to be the roaring 20s all over again. And I promise I wasn't here the first time around, but that's coming, and that's okay. So I would say, like, number one, that's going to happen. Number two is acknowledging that that's going to happen. Set up a plan now. Generally speaking, maybe not everyone who's here, but generally speaking, looking at the data, most folks who have been lucky to hang on to their employment, especially if they're working for a professional services firm, are spending less money than they were a year ago. So the savings rate has risen. People have some cash, and if you don't have a plan, the baseball analogy, Vladimir Guerrero showed up at camp apparently last year, all in great shape, and they shut down spring training. He went back home and he gained like 30 pounds in 3 months, and his teammates were very upset with him. So he's and he said, he's like, I didn't have a plan for what would happen if the league shut down. And he's back in great shape again. And I would say towards money, if you don't have a plan, don't expect great things to happen. Things will happen, but they won't be great things. So I would say have a plan, and it's good to spend your money. You don't have to save all of it, but try to save half of it. And put it into a solution that works for you, and try to build a discipline around it. And you'd be really surprised what can happen in just a few years. And the final trend is, I would agree with Debbie, and again, with the client at the center, as the client, don't be shy to remind everyone that you're at the center, and digital is coming is here with full force. So every sign up should be digital, verifying identification should be digital, movement of money should be digital, and it should be frictionless. Should be the goal. These are highly regulated companies and industries that are highly regulated, and again, it is money, so there's all types of other considerations. So there might be some friction along the way, but it should aim to be frictionless. And I think with the client at the center and acknowledging that's very important. I think that's going to be a trend. I would encourage if anyone's looking for a book to read, Post-COVID by Scott Galloway.
Hold on.
We didn't plan that. Yeah.
Hello.
It's just a phenomenal read about how I think it's kind of intuitive, but in history, when we look back at COVID, at least from a commercial perspective, it's going to be viewed as an accelerant. Trends that were already in place have been accelerated by, if not 5, 10 years. And whether that's curbside pickup to the death of certain type of retail or to specific brands, to the acceleration of investing trends and digital identification, verification, and other security, that's how COVID's going to be remembered. It's going to be remembered because that's what the people want. And I think that's how it'll go.
Thank you so much. And it's funny because for example, I'm not even here, everyone. This is an AI bot that's been hosting this entire virtual chat. So the future is here. A question from Jose for Debbie. In light of Google Pay, reimagined pay, save, manage expenses, etc., how is Interac looking to innovate to enable the Canadian banks to compete with a lot of the features that Google Pay is looking to implement?
Great question. Thanks, Jose. I think, the attraction of things like Google Pay or Alipay in other markets, where they combine, you have a wallet and then they combine a bunch of features to really address lifestyle needs, not just one thing, is obviously that has been a trend for a while. And Google reimagined some of their solutions. So yes, indeed, we are working on a number of initiatives. You might all remember that we actually launched in Canada in 2000, and I'm going to date myself now, was it 16? We launched the first domestic debit capability for Apple Pay. It was the first around the world. So where the large networks, global networks, had been able to deliver tokenization so that you can use Apple Pay on your phone, etc. We were actually the first domestic debit network to do it. Yay! But I think what you're referring to is combining all of those features so that you have now that capability. And we indeed have some amazing assets in Canada. So we've already talked about, our kind of love affair with e-transfer that over COVID grew, even more. We saw something like a 40+% jump in e-transfer that we initially had, e-transfer was used initially to move, send money person to person. We did it through email and then we did it through mobile, and now it's part of the fabric of Canadians. So, but at the core of what e-transfer is the ability for users to move money directly from one account to another account. So we've had that account to account real-time transfer for the payment geeks in the session for a long time. So we are looking at combining some of those capabilities, combining some of the tokenization and the crypto capabilities that we talked about also in the session, and delivering back to Rajan's customer at the center with some authentication capabilities. So it's a great question. Thank you. You will see that in the not too distant future. And when I say that, really, it's just combining these capabilities that are already in market, but with an easy interface that institutions like RBC and the other Canadian banks and credit unions will be delivering.
Amazing. And we have time for one more question. And the question again is for Debbie, and it's, what do you mean by open banking?
Oh my goodness. Thank you for asking that question. The term open banking is a term that has been described to allow customers to provide at their discretion and their control third-party access to your bank account.
Okay.
So In Canada, we actually tried to rename it to, and it was even as clunky, to consumer-directed finance, which sounds, sounds a little bit more like the topic, but we didn't get very far with that because it is a global movement, actually. So this is really, in a nutshell, forget the title, but the idea of it is for a customer or a business to allow a third party to access their account should they choose to, under their control. And we are working through that, the Canadian institutions, the banks, the ecosystem, meaning, the infrastructure players, the startup community, and the government. There is a task force that's been appointed by the government that we are actively involved in trying to bring that to market. That's, again, another payment geek term. Apologies for that. But really what it means is in the future, you as a customer will have even more tools at your disposal to control the way you go about your business.
And that is a great way to end our fireside chat today about the future of money. Thank you, Debbie, and thank you, Rajan, for joining us today. That was excellent. So thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you to everyone for joining us for this conversation. And we will be hosting a lot more incredible conversations in partnership with RBC InvestEase and some other incredible partners over the course of the year. So really looking forward to seeing you at more of these. And everyone, stay safe and looking forward to seeing you at the next one. Bye for now.
Thank you.